Some people make a business out of overcomplicating things. The reality is we're not putting satellites in space here.
Lift off!
Right? You don't have to be that smart to be a real estate agent. But on this channel, we are all about data, not drama. Holly, it's time for another weekly market update. We ready?
We're ready. Let's do it.
Let's go. All right, guys, welcome to the channel. John Garms, Holly Haven here with the Selling North Dallas Real Estate team. Today, we're going to break down the Selling North Dallas Real Estate Market Update tool. If you don't have your hands on this tool yet, drop down in the description. There's a link there. Fill that form out. We'll email the tool to you, and you can manipulate its data to your heart's content.
Here we go again. A master manipulator,
Holly, what are we seeing this week in the North Dallas real estate market?
You know what? We are holding steady, which is what we really like to hear. Man, this market's still so strong. We can see like this little bit of change from last month to this month, right? On this little gas gauge that we like to look at. It's incremental changes right now, which is really the best news we've had in a couple of months, because we made those big drops from May in through August, and now we're seeing our changes be a little bit much more micro data, right? We look at this every week, but we're seeing our week to week changes be less significant, which is great news for really our sellers. But it's not bad news for our buyers, because we made a nice little settlement there over the summer, and we're holding steady, so we look good.
Yeah, looking through some of these data points. So one that really stands out to me is median rent. So median rent, for a while it was on the way up. It's holding steady at $26.50. What does that mean for those that are renting right now and they're considering buying? Like, does that mean maybe there's another reason for them to hit the brakes because maybe the price hike is over?
Yeah, I think it's good news on both fronts for somebody who's renting today. That August month where everybody's trying to get into school, we have to make fast decisions sometimes because we need to get the kids enrolled, or we need to get school started. We're moving from one place to another, having to make big changes. Sometimes we just have to pay what we have to pay because we have a lot of options. During the month of August, we felt those rents really increase in July, going into August, and now we feel them settling just a little bit. So I think we are capping out a little bit at our rent because we see a little more rental inventory in lots of the different areas in North Texas throughout Collin County. So that's helping us with renters, right? Hopefully if they're about to renew, if they've been in a rental for say a year or 2 years and they're just now coming up for renewal, they should still expect a rent increase, because what happened when they signed that lease a year or two ago to what's happening today is still significantly higher. Somebody signing a lease today may feel a little bit, they may feel a little better for the long term, but you're paying somebody else's mortgage anytime you're renting. So it's hopefully going to settle a little bit for our current renters, but somebody coming up on a renewal could get hit pretty hard right now.
That's a really good point. The reality is we're not here to try to beat you up if you're a renter. We are simply here to give you the information. And for some people, it might make more sense for you to hold in a rental scenario. Maybe you need to be able to move fast and loose. I mean, there's a million factors to consider, but that's why it's so important for you to realize we are simply providing a baseline of information. If you want some help with your specific situation, drop down in the description. There's a link you can fill out. We'll reach out to you, talk through your specifics, your circumstances, your plans, your goals, your future dreams. We'll factor all that in, and we'll be able to get a lot more strategic on what your program would be. As far as we're concerned, it looks like things from an aggressive standpoint are starting to level out, and that's good news for everybody, don't you think?
I do. I think we took our biggest price and market hit. Our kind of resettling really happened in the month of July. We felt it probably the most in the month of July. And now I think we're just seeing those little incremental day-to-day changes, which are really normal in the market. We've talked about this before. What we call a truly stable market is 6 months of inventory. And right now we're somewhere around a month and a half of inventory in North Texas. So this is why we're still seeing this little gas gauge, strong into the seller's market, even though we're not at 100 anymore, right? We're at a good 50, 51. And something you and I touched on a little bit earlier when we were chatting about this video today was average days on market, median days on market. We're hearing so much about this because when we were in the height of the COVID housing market, homes were going under contract legitimately. So many homes were going under contract within 3 days. Some of us were trying to hold them a little longer so we could get some more showings, give some more opportunity, but we were averaging somewhere around 20 days on average at that time. Now we're seeing these, median at 35, average days at 49. But I want to point out something in this report that we don't talk about a lot. And I would assume that a lot of times, somebody requests this report, they open it up and they look at what we've taught. And we teach this little section here. But if you keep scrolling, you have a lot of content, right? This is a drop-down menu. You can look at lots of information. But this little market segment info down here tells us a much bigger story. We're talking about days on market, for example. This is broken down by price point. So a home around $400,000 is selling much more quickly than a home somewhere around $1 million. That's to be expected, right? We have more people in the market at $400,000. We have investors, we have first-time home buyers, we have just normal buyers that want to buy around the 400 price point, the size of home works. So we're seeing something very different here. So when we say an average of 49 days on the market, it's because we're having to average all of these different price points, all these different areas. And something on this report that stood out to me today, and the reason we're still calling this a seller's market, the reason we're still seeing us at that 50% or more mark, is new listings versus absorbed listings. So we have 63 new at this $1 million mark, but 78 have been absorbed into the market. They have been sold, they've been under contract, right? So we are still selling more than we're listing. We have more listings than we had over the past 2 years in some of those heavier times, but we are still moving steadily. To see 35 or 45 days on the market is a very strong market for sellers when our stable market is considered somewhere between 4 and 6 months. They call it 6 months. We're used to more like a 4-month market in North Texas.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We talk about this a lot on the channel, but the difference between markets, there's not one housing market in North Dallas, right? There are markets within markets. So there's a market where the median home price is $375,000. That market is different than those homes with a median price of $490,000. They're different markets, and there's just a lot to factor in. All right, well, this is really helpful stuff.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
What else are you seeing, Holly, that is noteworthy?
We talked a little bit about some mortgage stuff last week, and something that came up with one of my buyers yesterday is he's doing a conventional loan. He's putting 5% down. He's pulling that 5% out of his 401k. He personally has 10 years to pay that 401k back, and he's able to buy a home. Like, that's huge. He's not pulling money out of his bank account, out of his savings account, right? It's like some of us don't have, we hear 20%, we get really nervous. If I'm gonna buy a $400,000 house, I don't have $80,000 lying around that I can just, give to a mortgage company, but I might have 5% because that's, $20,000. And maybe I even have those funds someplace that I did not think to access them. And the 401k is a great place to do that.
We often say this, who you hire matters, and sometimes thinking creatively about where those funds come from. Some people would argue the opportunity cost loss if you pull something out of a vehicle like a 401k and put it into something like a mortgage, a home. Every situation is different. And what's the alternative? Are you renting? Are you buying? Are you living on a couch? There's so many factors to consider, but I love that we're willing to take a creative approach to it because everybody's situation is different.
Yeah, that's really what I was about to follow up with. Not every single buyer or seller has the same motivation. They don't have the same desire. They don't have the same access to funds or lending or even information. So not only working with us is important, but the people we work with, we hold very tightly because they're educated, they want to educate buyers and sellers, and we're really all here to just kind of be a guide and be a resource for people. I have nothing to sell but service, Jono. I don't have all of those, 10,000 homes on the MLS. Those aren't mine. Those are somebody else's product. We are here to be a guide, be a resource, and really help buyers and sellers make the best decision for their specific situation.
You told a story this week about a time when one of our lending partners referred us a client and the timing wasn't right for them. Would you share that real quick?
The lending partner sent us over this great referral. It was probably a $650,000 house. Of course, I reached out to the guy, we chatted, we talked about his situation. He was really wanting to sell and get the equity out of the house. And of course, if that's right for somebody, then I'm all for it. I'd love to help and get that house sold.
Let me pause you right there really quick. So he wanted to sell, we'll call it a $650,000 house, And was the intention to purchase another house?
It was, yes. His intent was to purchase another house.
Do you remember what that price point was?
Probably somewhere around the same. I don't recall. It's been about 18 months now since this happened. But
So show me a real estate agent that's going to reveal this and effectively talk themselves out of, let's call it $1.3 million in volume. Okay, sorry. Go ahead and finish. Continue with the story.
Yeah, as we went through his scenario, and I started asking questions. How long have you owned the home? Well, we built it. Great. When did you build the home? They had built it about, I want to say they'd been in the home about 14 or 15 months at the time. I told him, I said, hey, I want to stop you right there for a second. Why are you wanting to move? What are you looking to do? Well, we want to get the equity out of this. We know the market's really up from what we paid for it and built it. And I asked him if he had spoken with a CPA about capital gains, and he didn't know what I was talking about, which is not uncommon, right? It's not something most of us deal with every day. So because he had not lived in this home for 2 years, and it's 2 out of 5 years, not a CPA, but giving a little guidance here. Somebody can go chat with their CPA about their scenario. But that's exactly what I said to him. I said, I think you need to get on the phone with your CPA and have a quick conversation and make sure that this truly does make sense for you, because you're going to pay capital gains. If you have not lived in that property for 2 out of 5 years, you're going to pay capital gains on that equity gain. So maybe you gain 200,000, but what's the capital gains tax you're going to be charged? And it's different for every scenario. How long you've been in the house does matter. 12 months versus 15 months versus 18 months or 24 months makes a big difference on how much you're paying in those taxes. Once I educated him on that and he went and did his due diligence, he came back and he said, man, I appreciate that phone call. We've decided to hold tight right now because we're not willing to pay that amount in taxes. Now, that scenario was flipped with some other clients. I helped them build the house. They moved in. They were in the house less than a year. They had to move. They needed to make the move. So we talked about capital gains. They got with their CPA, and it still made sense for them to cash out their equity. 2 different buyers and sellers, 2 different scenarios, 2 different decisions. And it was their decision. We're just there to guide that process and make sure that they feel educated and know what decision they're making.
I love that. Not to beat a dead horse, but it's so important that when you're working with someone that you find a program that's willing to guide you through the process and not try to sell you on something that certainly benefits them, but may not be in your best interest as a consumer. Be sure to subscribe. We put out this content. We actually drop new content 3 times a week. We do a market update every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.
Bye, Felicia.